Good morning, everyone. Uh, Welcome to the sixth session of Polygonal. Today we have Veethika with us. She is from Toy and Game Design 2013 batch. Think she was doing something with games. She collaborated with uh, seniors and participated in competition, which converted into a startup called Greenopia. Then she worked in proper corporate, and now she is working in a open source organization. So we'll quickly bring Vithika on stage, and we will start the session. So Vithika,
Thanks so much. Okay, hi everyone. I'm Veethika, and I mean many of you here. You already know me. You are my batchmates. Um, so I was a student of TGD, and I think it's important to mention that beforehand because later in my presentation, you would be able to establish a connection there. So yeah, while at college, I was interested in so many things like I was active in so many different areas. I took part in many competitions. If you look at my portfolio, it gives a very clear picture of how clueless I was, what I really wanted to do after college. Is my screen, can you see it? I can't hear
yes,
anyone.
yes, yes, yeah, we can see.
Okay, cool. All right. So yeah, if you look at the kind of work that I did back in college, it was I was everywhere. There was no one direction to what I really wanted to do. Um, so yeah, today I'm going to talk about how my journey it unfolded and how did I reach where I am today, and what were the serendipitous moments, what were very thoughtful decisions, um, and how everything built up for the best. So, I mean, when I was in college, I was able to be a part of some very interesting projects. For example, the core project was one, which I don't have many pictures to show from there. I don't know how I lost all of that, but yeah, it that was something that my batchmates Tarun, Abraham, and we did under Sajid's supervision. We traveled to Kerala and we had to do a system design exercise around this problem that the coir industry was facing for real. That was, I mean, there were many moments there which were full of learnings. Then the next big thing that happened was the MTS Innovacy challenge that we won. So Mani, Mayukini, Devyani, and we took part in a design challenge, and we were the first place there. Later, that was converted into a startup by Mani and Mayukini, and I did support them for a while for their product. And later, I moved on to something else. Another great opportunity I had was to become a part of a design anthropology workshop. So we got to stay in Kutch for a long while, and this was right after my marriage, so understand like my level of dedication. And we like it was a good opportunity to see live, like real time, what problems the artisan communities were facing and how we could do small little tweaks to solve their problems. Then, as I approached towards the end of my course at NID and we near towards the design degree project semester, I realized that one thing that I really overlooked while I was there was working on some actual game design projects. So I took up something self-initiated for my degree project, and for 6 months I was focused on that. So I set out to design a game which I had never done before. And I had to start from scratch. Like I had to educate myself. I had to get myself familiar with what was happening in the industry and what kind of games are there in the market, how people are coming up with such great games, and how a good narrative can be converted into a nice gameplay, which is engaging, entertaining at the same time. So this is something that I came up with, and it was a pretty successful project. So this was later featured in what was that, global grad show in Dubai Design Week, and I had a chance to go there and present my work. So yeah, things worked out for the best. Now coming to the next phase in my career, it was something that was it wasn't very different from how anybody starts. Like most people start at NID, I got into Samsung as a senior product designer, which, by the way, is a big euphemism. And later I got to understand that it practically meant nothing, especially in the world that I was interested in. It actually meant nothing, that designation. So, yeah, I mean, I had some good and bad days there. But things overall, I mean, I think we both were not very perfect fit for each other, and um, yeah, I had to move on. So it turned out that even though I had spent 2 years at Samsung, at the end of my first year, I had started to look out for opportunities which were very specific to organizations who work closely with the open source communities. And Red Hat was one. I know that Red Hat had a presence in India, and very recently they had started to grow their design team in the US. And I was hopeful that something might come up, might sprout in the India team as well. So I started to follow up, and I did apply. And it took me almost 9 months to get to that job. I mean, the process, many things had to be reconsidered within the organization. They had to take a lot many decisions, change a few things, but eventually it happened, and this day arrived. And I think this was the turning point. And yeah, things went pretty much in a very different direction from there on. Now, where am I? Yeah. So this is where I was into the organization Red Hat, which was the pioneer in the open source industry. They pretty much established a very new picture, proving that even though you follow open source model of development, you could still be very successful in terms of profits. I mean, you could earn a lot of money out of it and create a successful business model. Now, this was a very different experience. I mean, I was suddenly exposed to a world that was so different from whatever I had experienced before. I had an idea. I mean, I did a lot of research around open source, Creative Commons before I got there, but in reality, things like they feel so different when they really happen. A few things that I would like to share, that experiences that were very jarring, very surprising to me in my early days at Red Hat. First of all, I was asked to work on a task after my orientation, and I did. I put up the work on what I believe was a Jira issue. And yeah, I mean, from there, my expectation was that this would be reviewed by the design team, and at the most, we'll have discussions with our stakeholders and all of that. But soon after that, a mail chain started on a company-wide mailing list. I was so not prepared for that. And I mean, product managers from different teams other than mine, and people from all around the organization, which was 13,000 plus employees. I mean, not everybody, of course, but so many people started to share their viewpoints, and that too, like publicly within the organization. This was too much to handle. I would say that I had to deal with that, and the first 100 times it felt pretty scary. But then as it grew on me, I started to see the good in that. So when you rise up to defend your design, you automatically become so much more accountable. You're so much accountable for the decisions you make. So you learn to say no, that no, this is not how it would work, and it would work in a certain way because this. So you become more vocal, more confident, and more decisive as a designer. Then another thing that was very different was how the user feedback thing works. Usually, I mean, in my previous jobs, how we used to do it was we got in touch with a third party. They recruited people, and I mean, we had to interview the recruited people, or the third party agency. They did it for us, and we analyzed the result and so on. But here, the users were pretty much always ready to speak to us, and that was, I mean, wow. You could conduct a user feedback session anytime you want, because users are just there. They are willing to talk to you anytime you want. And in fact, they have a lot to share because they are the contributors to the product as well as part of the open source community. So they really, I mean, they feel for the product and they have so much to share with you. The next thing was the design system, which is like such a big headache usually in any company, like managing the design system, having all those discussions like what should go there, what kind of rules should we make for a pattern. Here we had a support from a huge community. So even the design system at Red Hat, which was what the pattern fly. Yeah, it was an open source design system, which was amazing again. And I mean, internally we had to align with our business priorities. But apart from that, we had a whole community to help us with building this. So yeah, that was there. The next thing is the reach of the product. It was so much wider. I mean, because Red Hat had this philosophy that every change they make to the feature, every new thing they introduce to the feature, they would push it on upstream first. When I say upstream first, we mean like, let's say if I have a product X, there would always be a version of that XA, which is upstream, which is an open source product, which is available to everyone for free. Now, what's the difference between X and XA is X is provided to the enterprises and like Red Hat takes responsibility for the support for everything, every kind of help they would need for the product. But otherwise, there's always an open source version of that, which is freely available for users to pick and use and even contribute to, in fact. So yeah, but while at Red Hat, I had to do other things as well because, of course, they did not have any design presence. Not just they were a heavily engineering-led organization. So I mean that was their focus. It worked out for them. That's how they started. So I tried to create a presence within the Bangalore designer circle. We started something called Open Design Dialogues, and you can see like there was Dharmesh and Rasagya and other people who helped me in this process, and it was a really good session that we conducted. There were many opportunities that I identified in the Red Hat sponsored events that we were not utilizing before. So we had so many events within Bangalore, like Dev Nation, and what was this? I'm forgetting the name for this event. Okay, let's call it Dev Nation. So, I mean, there were so many opportunities. We had full control over these events and still we were like not doing anything about it. So I proposed setting up booths. We did that. We collected inputs from our users. I mean, there are people from the community who were participating in those events. So it was so much easier. They were already familiar and they were ready to come and speak with us. So all that happened. Then I got so many opportunities to travel to different open source events around the world and talk about our design practices. Then Red Hat is what introduced me to this whole remote work scenario to begin with. This wasn't intentional. I was not really a remote employee, but since the whole team that I worked with was based out of the US, so it made pretty much no sense for me to go to office. So I turned into a remote employee, and yeah, things were pretty good from there on. But I mean, in the last few days at Red Hat, something pretty interesting happened, which I think is kind of impossible otherwise, which is I applied for a job. And it's not that I applied for a job that was very something so interesting, but how I did it. So working for a company like this, I had very little hope that I would ever find something that's better, that has a better culture, has a better way of working, more transparency. But then since I was working on a developer tool, I, of course, like GitLab came up in discussions and I kind of Googled about it. And they were pretty popular about the culture they were fostering in the workplace. That was pretty fascinating. Like they called themselves a 100% remote workplace. They had no offices anywhere. And then there was so much more transparency. And I got to know about all of that because that's publicly documented in their handbook, like anybody could access it. So I went to their LinkedIn page, and since I was not really looking for a job, I think I posted the most casual application of my life. I just said, "Oh, I work in this particular area already. Good to know about this." We can see. I mean, it was so casual. I'm also embarrassed about that. Then, to my surprise, there was a follow up, and things they just rolled from there. Like I had my work calls in if there was a 30 minutes break, and one interview happened, and this kept on going for about a month until I cleared all the interviews, and then there I was. And the most interesting fact about this whole process was I did not have a portfolio. And I think this wouldn't have, and there was also no test, by the way, there was no design test. This wouldn't have been possible if there was any other industry that I was working for. But here, since I was working for an open organization, pretty much everything that I worked on, it was there. It was released, it was available for them to see. And I did so much of writing for everything that I worked on that all I had to do was really give them a couple keywords to search for on Google, and there I was. Like I was, it was so easily searchable because I had used the company blog portals to write my blogs and talk about my design process. So it was very simple, and I think this was a very unknown perk of working for an organization that's so open. Um, Again, yeah. So yeah, this phase came to an end. This was when I left Red Hat to join GitLab. Now, I mean, while that was happening, I will also touch upon a few other things that happened in the while that I was in Red Hat, which also kind of made a lot of difference. So, I mean, I took a part in many events, many kinds of events, I would say. There were events that were so heavy in software development topics. And I used to be the only designer present in the whole crowd. It was kind of overwhelming at times. Yeah, there was a different kind of pressure. I mean, I had to make people understand about things that maybe at some level they were not even concerned about, but they should be. So I had to word my presentations in a very different way than I would do for a group of designers. That was challenging. But accidentally, I also took part in some events that kind of opened my eyes to a very different perspective. So I took part in something called eLife Sprint the last year. This wasn't even happening in Cambridge. I applied for a scholarship. I got through the scholarship and I traveled to Cambridge. And when I was in that room, I figured that everyone present in that room was a researcher or a scientist or a PhD scholar. And of course, no designers, maybe a few developers. And then there I was. So the question was, what was I doing there? How would I help in the whole process? But since it was a sprint and the topic we decided on was an open science game. So this game was about teaching other incoming PhD scholars about what challenge they are going to face as scientists, as research scholars when they enter this field. Like, how would they have to deal with their supervisors or the new asks and all the different barriers like the licenses, the lack of funds and all of that. And so this is where I thought I could come in and I could make things simpler for other people. So I did what I did at NID the best. And I created an outline of the whole process for them. Like we started to brainstorm on huge charts, and initially everybody was kind of hesitant of the process, like what outcome is this going to provide and how is this going to help the process. But by the end of it, everybody was so much clear about the process that within 2 days we came up with a very elaborate concept. And one good thing about this whole process, what my takeaway was, how this was documented. It was documented on yeah, here it is. It was documented on GitHub. So this whole game and the process was documented on GitHub, and it was so refreshing for me. I was like, "Whoa!" So anybody could pick up the base design, they could make changes, they could put it back by pushing in a pull request, or a merge request, and there was so much of transparency and such a wider reach for something that we came up within 2 days, and this was a very, it kind of gave me a very different perspective, like, oh my god, we could totally do such things in our work as well. Then coming back to other things, yeah, these were some small little events, small little incidents that kind of contributed to my larger vision for openness and transparency. Then comes GitLab. Do I have a picture for that? Maybe no, because of course we are 100% remote. There was no moment to share. Okay, let's start with Gitlab Handbook. Yeah, everything is there, but I won't talk about any of these items on the list. So yeah, I joined the organization. I thought I knew everything because I'm coming from such a familiar background. What could be more surprising than that? But oh, heck no, there was. All right, so I started off as a designer for an area in GitLab, which was what they call lovable in the maturity scorecard. So it's a pretty mature area within GitLab, and there are so many users who already use it and they're happy with it. And I was suddenly put in charge for two different sections in that area, and that wasn't planned, but that was pretty overwhelming, and I kind of had to do two persons job for a while. So I just joined a company, I was doing two people's job. I almost had to work on 21 issues in a month. That happened, and that was, it would have been so difficult to do it in normal scenarios, but there was so much of support from everyone that that was accomplished. Okay, so that story aside, I was asked to kick off a research for something that was released right before I joined, and I was asked to start it off as an issue, a public issue. So I would go to the public issue because it's public, and so is almost all of my work that I do at GitLab. So you could literally see anything that I'm working on and even go and comment on it if that concerns you. So I'm talking about this particular issue because it was so different in nature. I had never conducted a research in a public issue, and I was like, what is going to be the outcome of this? It was like, I totally left it on fate, like, let's see how this rolls. And I was kind of right, like, I was not so sure how this is going to pan out. I came up with a structure, so I thought if I start, writing my question in threads, people would respond to those threads, but you can see that never happened. I mean, there are comments all around, but that never happened. Now, anybody could open and see this issue. And there was so much written on this. So for example, I would give you what kind of comments we got. Yeah, so there were also comments like this visualization is so ugly. Why do the XYZ needs to be 3-foot wide pipes? I would really suggest finding a designer. And I was the designer for this state group, so you can understand the humiliation. So that's when I understood that I'm in for a totally different game here. I mean, I need to up my game, grow a thicker skin than a skin that I had before. But then I kind of used this opportunity to my benefit. What I did was, from this issue, I recruited the interview participants. They were already ready to talk about how they were feeling. And yeah, they just hopped on different interview calls. They booked slots in my calendar. And when we finally analyzed the overall result from this, we shipped something that was so much more useful for all the users. And I mean, it was a great exercise overall if we look at it from the perspective of usability testing and gathering some solution validation after beta implementation. So I have been using very different tools, yes. But now that I understand that we have this, I would say we have some biases in our heads that certain kind of tools are meant for a certain kind of function. Like issues are for tracking work, and then Git is for developers that has everything to do with code. But working at GitLab, my perspective has totally flipped. Like we do all our work, we manage all our work through merge requests. We, in fact, document our designs using Git, and which otherwise I would have said like, what's the need to do that? But it has opened up such a huge area for such a huge perspective for me. Now, everything else is pretty much as it was at Red Hat, just that we are so much more open now, that our issues are open. Anybody can take a look at our work, even suggest things. But yeah, I mean, those things will go on as they are. Also, looking at some good things that open source exposed me to in my career. So, I mean, there are certain experiences that I would say I would have never come across, even if I would have thrown a lot of money at to experience these things. For example, having a midnight party at a national museum, then getting into the Edinburgh Castle after midnight, after like nobody's allowed there, then this view of I mean, making it to the Niagara Falls at that time of the year, then getting inside the MIT Media Labs, and the favorite section of MIT Media Labs for me, which is lifelong learning. Uh, and then watching Yankees and Red Sox play for the first time. I mean, for me, not that they are playing for the first time. And then having parties that I actually don't remember. I just found this picture in my phone. Then yeah, I mean, coming back to games, this is the connection that still goes on. I am not so disconnected from where I had started from. In fact, it happened so that last year at All Things Open, which is the biggest open source event that happens as of today, I traveled all the way to Raleigh to talk to a group of developers about the importance of educational games, and that was amazing. I mean, it was house full. There were people standing outside the room for this. This was so not anticipated. I was so happy about it. And then I have made my gaming groups wherever I've gone. I have friends from Red Hat, from GitLab, from everywhere who I still play games with. And in fact, Red Hat, thanks to Red Hat, I got this opportunity for the first time to attend my first spiel, which happens in Essen every year. Yeah, I'm so thankful for everything that my career has helped me experience, and I think I'm on the right track. Let's see how it unfolds from here. So I've been talking for such a long time. Yeah, let's see if anyone wants has any question.
Very interesting, Veethika. Like you shared your journey and insight into what, like the values and like how the community of open source, you know, designers, developers, or we can just say makers actually work with each other. So yes, we are now open for questions. Anyone want to ask, interact? You can do the raise hand button in the right side on your screen, or if you are on mobile or tablet, you can type your questions in the chat. Meanwhile, Vitika, can you share like how do like you or the organization, like open source organization, look at, I don't know if competition is the right word, but like how to survive when you have so many, you know, how to survive is also not right. Basically, in the ecosystem of many products which are there, where people are buying, and they have like services also because they are paying for it. And how does an open source organization like strategize or plan? Do they feel competitive, or how does it work?
I think none of us are untouched by competition here. There is intense competition, and I can like literally say that life here is so much more intense than I think a normal organization, because you also have this duty. Like you are not working inside a bubble. You are working out in the open, and you are interfacing with everyone from the community, even your enterprise users, then your internal stakeholders, and there's so much more that you have to answer for. So yeah, it gets difficult sometimes, but it's also fun to work at that pace.
Right. So, like, is there like, are there more competition in the open source world? Because even in open source, there will be different softwares or uh, tools which are being developed, which are for the same purpose. So,
There is there is definitely a lot of competition. So just because a company follows an open source way of development doesn't mean that they're untouched. Like even if you see for Git, I work for GitLab. There's GitHub, and they keep on doing something new every day. We have to keep up, and we also have to be ahead in the game. So that means we have to proactively try to be, keep on coming with new ideas to improve our products.
okay, we have a question from Madhav.
Mhm. MIT Media Lab. So yeah, that's kind of you have touched the wrong nerve, I must say. So there are moments when I feel that maybe I should pursue something else. It hasn't happened in the last 6 months, but yeah, it that used to cross my mind. So I wanted to keep this option open for myself that maybe I want
Hello,
to study more.
can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear
Yes,
me?
Sorry, I'm having network issues.
Ah, all
yes, we
right.
can hear you. Can you ask your question? Is there more to your question?
Yeah, I just wanted to know. I just read randomly on the internet about the MIT Learning Lab, the Playful Learning Lab. I just wanted to know your experience there and what the event was and what did you do there?
Oh, so I are you talking about the event? Because yeah, I take part in all of their events, but I was talking about MIT Media Labs. I visited the playful learning section there. But otherwise, like the Lego group and other universities which have a playful learning or something similar departments, they keep on organizing certain events if you're interested. So just keep your eyes open on Twitter, and there's so much going on. So I participate in most of them, even though that
Okay.
has nothing to do with my line of work. I just enjoy doing that, and I take part in workshops. I even conduct workshops sometimes. So you would find those writings in my Medium or my website. Like I
Okay.
write a lot about those things. Uh, that's just what I'm passionate about. So there's something that I work on, and things that I'm passionate about that would never stop.
Okay. Thank you.
Anything else?
Vitika, are you still like planning to work connecting games or like playful experiences and the open source? Like, do you have those kind of plans which you want to like uh, explore in the future?
There's one good thing. So I don't regret any phase of my life. They had their given me their own set of learnings, and I figured that this particular discipline that I was like affiliated to at NID. So the kind of things that I learned, like psychology and the theory of play, they would never be obsolete. They almost help me in so many things in my everyday work. And yeah, I'm also actively and very consciously still in touch with so many activities happening in that field. Uh, I follow a lot of people who are kind of pioneers in that area, but more in lines of how to use tech. I mean, how to use technology for learning experiences for kids, which are not dystopian. You have to keep that in mind. Like you can't treat kids as resources and just keep pouring stuff into their brain and wait for it to burst someday. Uh, yeah.
So, like these days, there is a big fuss about children should learn coding, like 6 year, 7 year old children, like they are on white hat JR and like
Yeah,
different.
that's so unfortunate.
What are your thoughts on that? Uh,
I mean, I think this whole thing started because there were some exceptional kids that like emerged from the crowd, but you have to understand that you can't target at making everybody an anomaly, like intentionally. That doesn't happen. And we are literally like wrecking their brains doing this.
right. Nalini has a question.
Let me read it.
Uh,
Yeah.
Yeah, he is going to speak.
uh, Actually, so I want to ask does open source movement does it pose any kind of threat to the companies who actually provide like proprietary softwares, something like, or they do? Is there any competition against them, like this movement, and then those who capitalize on that?
If so, I have been attending open source events since I think 2016, and I have seen a drastic change in the trends there. Uh, Most of these events are now, they are sponsored, like the platinum sponsors for these events are organizations that you wouldn't have even imagined supporting open source. They have understood the game. They know that there's no way and no amount of investment that they could make that could make up for this contribution from the communities. So they're very much a part of the game now. Nobody is still sidelined anymore, and nobody has any opinion otherwise. Yeah, this has more or less become a very established trend in the tech industry that if you want to be successful, you have to leverage the power of the community.
And how many people in India, or basically student community, they are aware of this open source movement, as in they know about it, or they use or consume products.
I think this is mostly the developer diaspora. They are very much acquainted with these practices, and if their organizations they allow them to make a contribution to, they do that. And then a big chunk of that population is also students. That's a very good way of building their portfolio, and they're aware of that. So they use these open source projects to they make contributions to that, so that their contribution is public, it's visible by all. So let's say if they're going to apply for a job, so anybody can open their GitHub profiles, look at their the pull requests they have made, and understand like what's the state of their knowledge in this area. But in design community, yeah, it should be more. It's not, because of how open source is advertised. It's advertised like it's made for developers. It is not.
Exactly, and I still feel we don't know much about this area, as we still go for the proprietary softwares,
Right.
and we don't talk much about the open source softwares as such. And also, no one is willing to, like, they have too much faith in the proprietary softwares, and they don't want to go for the open source software. So that kind.
That was pretty much the reality until I would say 3 years back. But things have
Change.
improved already. I mean, open source has won the game, and it's a done game.
So, extending to that question, do you think, like, just as do you have insights, or are there any things happening to take this whole idea of open source from it has already spread across the technology community to other communities, like people who are doing not just designers, but there can be many things like social design and all, craft. So, are there any movements or initiatives which try to take this whole idea to a different set of communities?
See, I think the key to doing that is first of all educating designers about what this whole openness thing is all about. I mean, what do you mean when you're saying I'm going open with this project or my approach? A big role is played by licenses. So in my opinion, if you ask, Creative Commons license is a huge gateway for designers to get themselves familiar with openness to begin with, so that they could start creating work that could be openly shared. And then only someone would be able to pick it and propagate this whole concept of building up upon somebody's work, openly sharing, and following the open principles for designing and not just developing.
So,
We have Vasudha.
yeah, I'll just complete my question. So, how do you try to, catalyze community to be open with their work? For example, if I'm making something, it is a website, an app, or a product, or digital. It can be a film also. It can be, it can be any creative output. So I would definitely, as a general thought, I would want to have something back, because I have produced this out of my resources. So how do you communicate to those people the importance of, because it's a dicey situation, right? Like people do a lot of self-initiative based work, and then again you can say it to put it open. So how does any stories around this?
I think a big problem is the lack of education around this. So people feel that if they surround themselves with this firewall or proprietary laws, they are going to be. I mean, they'll be exclusive and they'll be more in demand and all of that. But what I think all the successful people, including Elon Musk, Satya Nadella, and everybody has understood already is that to be successful, you have to be in demand. To be in demand, you need people to understand what value you hold. And to accomplish that, you have to show your work to people first. Let them use things. Unless they have used something firsthand and they have seen it real time, what's the reason for them to believe in whatever you're doing in your work? So, I mean, following the open source development of softwares, it definitely gives them an edge in regards to it increases the reachability, and it makes more and more people use a product, and it builds up your credibility. And once your credibility is built, you know that how many wonders that could do for your business.
Sure. So we'll take up questions from. First, we had a question from Abhilasha Tripathi in chat. Not being from an engineering background academically, how do you understand developers' problems? If things get more technical, how do you wrap your head around it?
It was very difficult in the initial years. I mean, I think I spent 1.5 years at Red Hat just wrapping my head around what's going on. So I had to self-educate myself. I have taken up many courses on Udemy. I have read so much. I still start my day with reading a lot. I still keep reading about all the incoming technologies and everything that's possible. I don't think there's a shortcut to that, but since I have decided that this is the path that I would want to pursue, I'm making those efforts. And I think anyone who's passionate about something, they have to trade a few things off, right? So this is my trade-off.
Vasudha, we have a question from Vasudha.
Hi, Veethika.
Hi.
Thank you for sharing your journey. I am Vasudha and I'm in my final semester doing toy and game design. And I felt very relatable when you looked at your portfolio and you were so confused about what you wanted to do. Because when I look back at my portfolio, I feel the same. I feel NID gave me a big opportunity to explore in different fields, which was super multidisciplinary. But when I go outside and I introduce myself as a game designer to people, they tend to put it inside a box. So did you feel any issues, or how did you overcome explaining people that you're more than just a toy and game designer? Or, I mean, you have other things that you keep,
So there were reasons that I took up UX designer's job at the first place. I had to pay off my education loan. I'll be very frank. So I took up the first thing that there was. But yeah, while I was pursuing that, I made it very clear that I have some side agendas as well. I have a side interest. It really intrigues me. I'll keep pursuing it. And I won't just follow all the trend that there is in front of me and give this away, because I found few things which I personally felt is going to help me in every problem that I'm going to tackle in my career, no matter what field I would be working for. But yeah, I mean, I did not exclusively face the situation that you're talking about. I never had to explain myself. I chose not to explain myself.
And did you ever felt any inhibitions of moving away from game design, like feeling because you've specialized in this and you're suddenly moving away?
Yeah, and it was.
I mean, how did you circle it back?
A year back, I had this urge to get back to all of that and start something big, something different. Then the pandemic happened, and my plans were squashed. But yeah, it does happen. It's natural that you would feel such ambiguity in the middle of your career. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, it's good to be passionate about a few things, but then I mean, you have to balance things in your life and then your passion. So yeah, at this point, I think I'm pretty comfortable, not comfortable, but very interested in what I'm doing. And but yeah, there was this time when I really wanted to pursue a PhD in game design. Never happened, as you can see, but there wasn't any harm in trying.
Thank you, Veethika. All the best.
Thanks. Then I see there's another question based.
By Surbhi. Surbhi has asked, how do you plan and schedule time for writing about your work?
Yeah. So I mean, this is the path that I've taken. I don't maintain a portfolio anymore. I write about my work, so it's very visible everywhere, and so it also helps me keep up with my own role key results at work. And it does take some extra effort. Like, I mostly do my writings around weekends because I just couldn't focus on writing anything in the weekdays. There's so much of work happening, but it has paid off, and I've understood the value. So I just keep doing that. And there's one more side to it. So, like Abhilasha pointed, that I tackle with a lot of technical stuff in my work. And I understand the pain that a designer would face in learning those technical stuff. So what I've started to do is on my Medium, I've started to write my tech-related learning, write about my tech-related learning, so that, and it's from the perspective of a designer, so it's easier to pick for a designer, because what I read, most of the stuff is by developers, and it's so difficult to crack that down. Like, while reading a paragraph, you have to Google 10 stuff. And I have done that. So I would really not want other designers to go through that if they want to get a knowledge in this particular area. So yeah, that's my new effort, and I hope that's going to help other designers who would be interested in educating themselves about technology.
What all like tools or new platforms did you learn
Oh,
so far?
that's so much. So first of all, there's a continuous integration, the area that I'm working for. So when I started off, I had no clue what this is about. Then to understand what that is about, I had to understand the whole development process. To understand the development process, I had to understand the development in the difference in all the languages, programming languages. To understand that, I had to understand the basic languages first. So I started off with the most basic training, which is in JavaScript, HTML, CSS. But then I went in a little deeper to understand the different frameworks in JavaScript, because front-end knowledge never harms a designer. So it's very subjective, like whether or not somebody wants to pursue it at another level. But I just thought that since I'm anyway reading about it, why not also use it for my benefit?
Interesting. We have a question from Neil Koradia. He's asking, is there any strong inclination towards consumer products versus enterprise products in the digital open source community? Does that really affect the way open source community works?
Can I see the question? Is it somewhere?
I'll repost in the chat.
Okay.
Yeah, you can see there.
Oh, okay. Strong attention towards consumer products or enterprise products in the digital open source communities. Um, what do you mean when you say consumer products?
Neil, can you elaborate on your question? Or we are inviting you to the stage. Yes, he's coming.
Okay.
Yeah. Hi,
Hello.
Neil.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah. Yes, yes. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I think it's more in terms of, say, for example, your Instagrams, your Facebooks, they all are very consumer centric products, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when you say, for example, there are lots of products like, again, Miro is, for example, your consumer facing, but there are other products which kind of are stacked on Miro. So does it really? And then there are some products which are like say for government or big corporates. So is the open source community very active in terms of these enterprise products, or is it still in the realm of consumer products? Does it make
I,
sense? Question?
yeah, it does, and so this actually made me think about the different kind of personas that I have seen firsthand in the community. There are people who have very rigid principles, and in fact, if you invite them to a Slack platform, they would tell you, "No, I would only talk to you on IRC," and there's nothing you can do about it. So that's one, and then there is like what kind of at some point, I think everybody has to make a trade-off. Like CC moved from Creative Commons moved from IRC to Slack a few years back, and that it had hit such a heated debate. But they had their reasons, and I think at some point people have to accept that there are certain functionalities and certain features that is they have to consider the benefits that those features are providing for the overall increased reachability and in fostering the whole community, and like having very rigid principles is actually against open.
I think I got one of the answers which I wanted, but another
Uh-huh.
thing like a follow up is, or just a different way I would put that question is, say for example, what are the majority kind of products that open source community works on? Um, is
When you say
there
works on, do you mean that what they use for their own development purpose,
no, not for the
for their
development.
everyday use?
No, no, like as an outcome, like as a community, for example, there would be certain kind of, I don't really know what GitLab works on. So maybe you can just describe what GitLab is working on in terms of the different kinds of products it is working for. Um, does the question make sense?
Yeah,
I
actually,
mean,
Okay, so for example, like GitHub is just a platform, right, where
yeah,
like developers come in and it's a way of working. But
right.
as an outcome, a lot of different kinds of developers. So, for example, a Facebook engineer would never come in to put on all his code open source on GitHub, right? It's because Facebook is a closed community, right? So, what are the different kinds of famous ones, open source product communities apart from say these close knit communities like Facebook, and these are like really popular products? Maybe it's just a lack of my knowledge. So, um, yeah.
Yeah, I'm finding a good relevant link for you. I understood your question. So one thing that the community always keeps in mind is like, is this particular method or tool following the principles of open source? And I'm putting the link here in the chat. That what is the open source way? It is very clearly defined. Like the principles of open source are transparency, collaboration, release early, release often, inclusive meritocracy, and community. If those things are kept at the core of the practices of any tool, yes, the community would go for it, because otherwise it defies like the whole purpose of the existence of the community. If they couldn't like share the work, if the work is not licensed under GNU, MIT, and all of the other open licenses, what good is it for? It's so restrictive. Anything restrictive cannot survive, because propagation is, I think, the gist. Like
Yeah.
there should be room for propagation.
Okay, got it. Thank you so much.
Next, Nitin has asked, with the new age of generative and organic graphics, it gets difficult for old age users who have been into a traditional medium of creation. Can you share any resource where the creation of these would be easy or a place where we can learn?
Like what kind of tools are you specifically talking about? Just a reference.
I guess he's asking about generative and organic graphics. That's where he starts.
Um,
Nitin, can you elaborate on your question? By the time Rishabh will ask. Rishabh,
Yeah, hi. Hi, Veethika.
Hello.
Pardon me for the same that I joined a bit late, but for the very little that I've heard from you. So, I personally am a new media design student. I work as a user experience designer, and it's been like 1.5 years since I've been working in the industry. And joined the domain for the exact same reason which you mentioned, like to pay off my loan and everything else but you know what, while joining NMD you have a certain hunch, you have a certain inclination, but while you're pursuing that UX domain you always have an anxiety or a fear that I don't want to drift away from the thing that belongs to my heart.
Yeah.
So I'll divide my questions in two parts. How much time did it take you after college to pursue what you actually wanted to do? One. The second part, how did you address those fears and anxieties while you were pursuing something that was not exactly what you actually wanted to do? I mean, if that makes sense.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's easy to talk about because honestly, I never stopped pursuing for what I stood for and what interested me. There was not a moment that I wasn't trying. I was at Samsung, but I was also not at Samsung.
Nice.
And yeah, the anxiety is always going to be there. You can't really do anything about it. So there's nothing that I can tell you that's going to take your anxiety away. It's a part of our. It's part of life.
Hmm. But good to hear that, Ritika. I mean, very inspirational to be very frank. And people like you give us hope that yes, it's never too late.
That's good to hear.
okay. Nitin has added his talking about where learning a new language is a barrier. How do you bridge this gap? Basically, I guess he's asking. There are tools where people can create generative graphics. Like there is a software called Touch Designer.
Right.
So he's asking. I think it's best if you can ask.
I think I get like the overall gist of his question, but I would just tell you, Nitin, that I have never worked with generative graphic generator. So, but I would talk in terms of what's the situation with all the tools that's available for designers and also for developers, because you mentioned that other ways where learning a new language, Python, etc., is a barrier. How to bridge the gap? So there would be like situations when you would feel that you should know everything. That's a very wrong feeling. You have to deal with it. You have to convince yourself that you cannot learn everything, and you have to decide what is it that you're really inclined towards, and is it really going to help you in the longer run. For example, you would come across many advanced languages, but you have to keep in mind that there would be a new language every fortnight. Like you would wake up 10 days from today, you would see there's a new language in the market, or maybe there's some big change that happened in the core of the previous language, and you have to keep up with the changes. So pick something like gain expertise is what I would recommend, and it goes for the designer tools as well. I mean, in what the 5 years of career that I have had after my masters, I have worked on more than 30 tools. So I only get to the depth until those things are important for me, because I know that tomorrow I might have to learn something else. So what's the point of like gaining the expertise and being the thought leader for that tool?
True. Okay. So, Veethika, like we were discussing while that we will also plan for a workshop in the future where different people like students or designers who are working, they can learn to use GitHub more interestingly. And what actually can we also some point of time have like a what's happening these days is a lot of students are burdened with loan, and then when they get out of the college, they want to work on different things, and there are no everything costs, right? Every tool that you use has a cost. So in such a scenario, like we can also figure out if there is a workflow of different uh, open source softwares which are accessible to people, and also like where if I will be using a open source software, I would like to contribute to its design. Like, so how can people do that? How easy is to contribute to an open source project?
I think that's a really great idea, and that would be very useful. So far, what I have outlined is the use of Git, because file management, in my opinion, is the first thing that should come in picture. But what you just talked about, the workflow, like specifying workflows with tools, that would be very helpful. I know some people like the Suraj Bharti who licenses his work in CC. So I think he might also have some experience in working with tools which are open, such as
Hmm.
I'm forgetting Blender. Blender is a good tool, and then this, but it would vary for people with different interests. So there could be one generic workshop that takes care of the very high level workflow, like how to manage files, how to make small code level changes, or how to deal with the raw code and all of that. But for format specific things, there has to be different tracks. Like if someone is interested to work with videos, they would be using different set of tools and so on.
Right, right. Sure. We have a question from Survi. Survi is asking, what's your take on GPT-3 as regards open source design? Can you also tell what is GPT-3 being mentioned? And then
Can I see
answer.
the question?
Yeah, it's in the chat. It's in the chat. Survi. Yeah.
GPT. Surabhi, can you elaborate on GPT-3?
Till then, we can start with Sakshi's question. Let's see if Sakshi can join the stage. I have sent her the invite.
Oh, UX
Yeah.
research. Yeah, I think I would love to talk about this. I think in open organizations, you get so much of freedom and you have so much of control on your research.
Hmm.
We mostly take care of all our stage or group related research by ourselves, because the dedicated UX researcher team is more dedicated for the strategic work involved, like for the whole company, rather than doing small little researches for just some groups. So first of all, because of the reachability of the product, like since we have a core in GitLab, we say we have open core. That means we have a version of GitLab that's free for everyone to use. So there's so many users. All we have to do to recruit is just reach out to them, maybe through our Twitter, through LinkedIn. And then we compensate them for their time, and we have interviews with them. And if needed, we also conduct some workshops with them. And that's not it. That's just the part, like to access the user base. I mean, recruit users for the researches. But the process, we get to play around it a lot. I am a firm believer in mixed methods. Like I like to mix data science approach with non-feasibility testing and other, interviews and everything, because it gives us two very different perspective. One tells us like a very black and white picture, and the other gives a contextual information about that black and white picture. And in my opinion, both are very important. So yeah, I get to experiment. Yes, actually, you were saying.
Hey, that did answer my question. I was just curious to know that do you face any I mean not open to UX research, and you'll have to convince again and again in organizations like these where these are very technology centric and the work runs in a fast pace. So how do you deal with that, and what kind of efforts are required for people like us who go to a organization like this where they're like small teams of design and researchers?
I can tell you about GitLab. At Red Hat, it wasn't so strict, but in GitLab, our like we intentionally strategize around very frequently running research exercises. Like it's a part, it should be a part of our daily day-to-day job. So what we do is before taking up an issue for working on, it's the role of the product manager and the product designer. So here, like product manager and designer, they are a team. They work together to strategize the work for the entire team. So we take up this decision that, okay, if we want to take this particular direction for future, we are going to run a problem validation exercise today, a research. We'll talk to users to at least know that should we dip our feet in this water to begin with? Like, is it worth, do they want it? Then if the result is positive, we create an MVC, then release it under beta, and then we take up the solution that we have created and we conduct a solution validation. Like it keeps going on and on. There's no hard and fast time-bound restriction that we have. We do it since we roll out new features every milestone, which is a month. So these things, they just happen right after like one after another, and we just wait for some time for users to actually pick that feature, try it a bit, and come up with their opinion. Then we proceed, and once it's there, once we remove the beta flags in case the validation works out, then we wait for some time again to check the maturity of that area. And the maturity check that happens very frequently, so that we are not we don't never stop thinking about that feature or that particular area in the product, and like we don't never stop working on that. Does that answer?
Yeah, it did.
I can give you the product development flow. It's there in the handbook. I'm pasting the link here.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Okay.
Yes, so Surbi has elaborated on her question.
Okay. I need to catch up on this. I had heard about this. Like, I only remember hearing about this. I never read up. I was just being lazy, but that's definitely something I should be catching up on. Thanks, Surbi. Is there any part of it that I could talk about? Can Surbi have the stage? Like,
Surbi, I think, is joining from mobile phone.
oh, okay.
Okay. Do we have any questions, thoughts? Anyone want to share anything from audience? Feel free to join us on stage. You can click on the raise hand. Surbi has added. Yeah.
Okay. So sorry. I can hear an echo. Bhargav, can you? Yeah, thanks. So for Surbi, that you can describe a design in one language. I don't have a concrete answer to that, but I would give an example of what my approach is. So beginning of this year, I took part in a Lego conference. It was again connected to playful learning in some way. But there was a session that an approach that educators are using with the kids. So they're using Lego as a medium to teach. And I mean, they had put words on the Lego blocks, and there were many words, like different words written on each block. They give kids a canvas, and they have those words which are actually methodologies, and they ask kids to come up with their own methodology by adding those bricks together and communicating their thought. Like, but I mean, the essence of that whole exercise was to bring yourself at the same level as the kid and to come up with a common communication language. And that said a lot. I mean, we work in an organization where we have developers, designers, product managers, all speaking different languages. Maybe product managers speak little a language that is kind of understandable by all. But bringing in this, this whole philosophy that all sides should try to come down to a level where they could communicate in a common language. So this is the reason I persuade designers to at least make themselves familiar with tech terminologies and what's going on in the industry. And similarly, use like less jargons in communications and keeping things very simple, because we are not trying to establish our territory here. We are trying to work together, and we should be speaking a language that is understood by all.
Okay, interesting. Now we have a question from Jaiti Dave. She is a student in Nirma University. So we have more people joining from outside. She's asking what quite an intriguing session. What is the product for the platform like GitHub? Since GitLab is a community, so what exactly does product mean here? Thank you.
So first of all, it's not just a community, it is actually a product. I can again find a link. Okay, maybe I'm doing a lot of links here. So it's a DevOps tool chain. GitLab is a DevOps tool chain, and so is like all of those other things. GitHub is a tool, it's a platform. GitLab is a DevOps tool chain. Apache is a license, and Kubernetes is a technology, and Fedora is a OS. They are all actually products. They also have their communities which support them. So those are all upstream products. So when you have companies like Red Hat and GitLab, what they're doing is they're maintaining two versions of the same product for upstream and for downstream. That means for the community and for the enterprises who are paying for it. Yeah, but they're products. Does that clarify?
Yeah, I think broadly it does. Anyone from audience would like to ask, share something? Cool. So, Veethika, I have a question. Like you were in college, you mentioned you wanted to explore, all these things. Maybe it wasn't clear, but you found your way, and now you feel like you are at the right place, right? Doing things that you like. So, what is your like after this? What are you planning? Like, in terms of genre of work, like what interests you after working in such a interesting community-based platform? So, what do you?
Yeah, I can talk about it. So
Yeah.
one thing that really scares me, that actually scares me, is where would I go when I'm not working for GitLab? Like, it really scares me. So you might be seeing me here for a very long time. And what's happening is, since I have really dedicated my years to developer tooling and developer experience, it's very noticeable in the industry. That would go for any area. If you have so much of like expertise and you're writing about that a lot, and you're kind of dispersing your knowledge all across, people notice you. And it wasn't easy to gain this knowledge. I'm not saying I'm an expert. I'm definitely not an expert, but I know about stuff. I could say that. And it took a hell lot of effort. So I'm definitely not diverging from the developer's experience area for a long while, because I've really worked for it. What else was your question?
It's just that how, like, how do you envision what is beyond this, like that?
Yeah, for beyond this, I think I have to keep doing what I'm doing.
Interesting. Sakshi want to ask or share something? She's
It's
here.
not getting recorded, right?
Sorry.
You're not recording this, right?
Uh,
You can, okay.
yeah.
I have a very naive question, and I think you would be the best person to give me some light on that. So I've been working with developers and in the digital space for a while now. And being a service designer and researcher, I have to work with UX designers, product managers, and the senior developers, part of the scrums and stuff. But something which I'm running from and thinking about is to know a bit more about coding, at least to a level where I can communicate and question or maybe ask the right questions at the right time, so that my research and the product converts into some the way we envisioned it. So to start that, what are your tips, and from your experience, what are the resources we can look at to start with, to have that at least vocabulary and knowledge?
Okay. It's a very difficult question, Sakshi, because it's not naive at all. It's a problem that many of us are facing. So, I mean, when I look up for getting myself educated in a particular tech topic, I look for articles which are which are well worded. They are not like using terms like this cluster, that cluster, then you create a variable, insert a secret, create a connection, all of that. I want things simplified. So there are some authors who do that. I have followed them on Medium. And I've been able to do that because I've been searching for such topics, and like going through hundreds, I've bookmarked maybe a couple of them. Then I take up Udemy courses. They're very cheap. They're about 400-500. You just have to like buy them once, and you can take them up at your own pace. So I have this self-initiated 100 days of code going on. It started last month. So this gives me a hope that by the end of those 100 days, my knowledge might not be like very great, it would be better. Then internally, we have many opportunities. So in our key results for even the UX team at GitLab, we have key results that say that make changes to the front end codes and migrate deprecated buttons. It sounds tough, yes, it is to take up for the first time, but I always do it. So last month, I pushed 5 merge requests for front end changes. I don't know exactly what I was doing there. I followed instructions, but I now have a good hang of it. Like it took some time, but I now understand the workflow. So like pushing yourself to do something that you're very uncomfortable with is the key. And right now I'm taking a traineeship in maintaining the design system. And here maintaining design system means doing a lot of front end work. That's another thing that I have embarked on. So you have to take a leap once in a while.
Okay. I will definitely check out 100 Days of Coding for sure.
But if you have any request, you can tell me. I might write a blog with illustrations on that. I am doing that these days just to make things easier for everyone else. I don't want everyone else to suffer like I did.
That will be nice.
Yeah, I mean, actually knowing or maybe having a checklist or a guideline to begin with, I think that would definitely help. And
Yeah.
coming from you will give us the challenges you have faced, and we can overcome maybe fast.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, you can tell me anytime through Instagram or some any chat platform, like what is the topic you would want to see next. I have something up on Git about Git on my Medium, and like that's coming useful for some designers.
Okay, sure. I will be you.
We have Raja. He want to ask and share some things.
Hey Raja, sup?
Hey Veethika, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Very long
Oh,
Yeah, it's been a long time, yeah.
yeah, it's a long
Before
time.
I thank you for this wonderful session, I have a small question. But
Okay.
what would you suggest as a friendly or a simple entry point for designers to the open source community? Where does one start?
There are certain projects. So, for example, one I know is open source design. What you can do is you can go to the GitHub profile. Let me find a link. Yeah, open source design is one. Then there are other open design initiatives. If you just Google, there would be a lot that you could very easily be directed to. How you have to start is go to their GitHub page. fork the project, make a clone. There would be instructions available for that. And or if you don't want to do that, if you don't want to do it through your local, you can also do it right from the online platform. You can start opening issues that, oh, I saw this is the problem with the interface, can you fix it, this is my suggestion, we should do it this way. People will start to have conversation with you that no, it should be done this way and all of that. Then you settle on a solution, and then you summon the front end designer, then that please come into the picture and make it like realize this solution.
Thank you. So, if do we have any other questions?
We have a question from Jaiti again. She is asking, for open source, is the platform their product? If so, what is the product design process in such a context?
So I'm trying to find an answer to this. What's the process?
Yeah.
A little while back, I posted a link about our product development flow. It's documented in our handbook. But I mean, what do you think a product is? A digital product can be anything. It can be a platform, an application. Yeah. So I mean, why? I would have a question for you. Why do you think a platform wouldn't qualify to be a product?
I think Jaiti is using mobile phone. She can't join.
Yeah, so I mean, the short answer is it is a product, and I mean, platforms are definitely a product. But the process that we follow is documented in this link. If you go to the handbook, it's publicly available. We start with scouring through our backlog, like what are the issues. So in our backlog, majority of the issues are opened by the community, and that's so great. Like sometimes they just end up telling us, oh, hey, you have to do this in the future, and we have to just pick up the right things from there and get working with that. And one more validation that happens from the side of the community is we have this system to vote up and vote down. So imagine they open the issues, they themselves vote it up and vote it down, and some have like 100, 200 upvotes. So it's so easy for us to pick up like, okay, this is something that's really needed by the users.
Okay. I think Raja would like to share some thank you note, and then Nalini would close the session. It's like 1 hour 24 minutes. So, Veethika?
Yeah, that was my bad internet connection. Can you repeat, Raja?
Okay. Yes. We can hear. So I think now we'll close the session. It's like 1 hour 20 minutes.
Okay.
So, yeah, Raja would like to share something, and then Nalini would finally.
Yeah, so I just wanted to thank you for this such a wonderful session, and especially like sharing your journey of you being passionate about something and pursuing it till the end, and putting in the effort which was required. Like it's very commendable for someone to go into the depths of like learning new languages and going to the differences of different languages, and whatever you shared with us, that is very inspiring. And thanks a lot. It was so nice to hear from you after a long time.
And I have a thanks that I have to give to you all as well. I mean, it's a big effort that you guys have taken up, and it might look small to others, but I know how difficult it is to organize and coordinate stuff. But giving us this opportunity to come and speak about our work and get in touch with the larger NID diaspora, it's really great. And thank you so much for this.
Yes, most welcome, and we'll definitely be doing this more. You are doing some workshop or events, right? Is there anything you want to share?
Yeah. So on Tuesday, I'm doing a workshop in the Creative Commons Global Summit 2020. Last year, I won a scholarship, so I traveled to Portugal to conduct a session. This year, it's online, so it's good for all. But what I'm doing is I can quickly share my screen. I'm doing something very useful that everybody would be able to access this. Yeah, I am doing this on GitLab. GitLab is visible, right?
Yes, we can see.
So I've created a new project on GitLab, and I'm like noting down all the instructions to participate in this workshop. Like it could be self-initiated for you. You can just anytime go to this, take part in the activities, and like document your outcomes by yourself without any help from anyone else. Uh, yeah, so I might share this. Where should I share this that everyone?
You can share the link in the chat, and then I'll also try to share this on the page. So if people want to join, they can join the workshop.
Then maybe I'll share it with you later because I still have to make some changes to this.
Sure, sure, no problem, no problem. Okay, so yeah, Raja, you want to share anything? I think Nalini would give the closing. Okay, Nalini.
Hi, Veethika. It was a wonderful session. I think everyone here would agree to that. And thank you for sharing your experience. And we can definitely sense your passion and enthusiasm about the idea of openness and how it can be channelized or tapped through design. Also, how you have navigated from your discipline back in NID to the current spot, learning so much about the processes and sharing the nuances at this stage. So I hope many people would look into the concept and the principles of open design. And thank you again for patiently answering all the questions. Thank you.
It was a
It was
pleasure.
wonderful.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Veethika.
Thanks.
Thank you, everyone, for joining.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone. Bye.
How? Okay, let's go.